I spent 12 years building a company that almost didn't survive its first 3. 12 years of staying late, of answering emails at midnight, of choosing quarterly reports over vacations. I wasn't just an employee. I was there when we had 8 people and folding chairs instead of proper desks. I was there when payroll almost bounced. And I was there when we finally became profitable. So when my manager Daniel walked into my office on a Thursday afternoon and said, "We need to talk," I thought it was about the Q4 projections. It wasn't. "Conference room, now," he added. His tone was different, short, tight, controlled. When I walked in, I immediately understood. The entire department was seated. Marketing, finance, HR, even 2 interns. It wasn't a meeting, it was a stage. Daniel stood at the head of the table like he'd rehearsed this. "Kira," he began loudly, "after reviewing performance metrics and strategic alignment, we've decided to restructure your position." Restructure, the polite corporate word for humiliation. I felt heat rush up my neck. I had exceeded every performance target for 6 consecutive years. I had closed the contract that kept this company alive during the recession. I trained Daniel when he joined 7 years ago. He used to ask me how to build presentations. Now he was firing me, publicly. "We need more innovative leadership," he continued. "The company is evolving." I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. Some were uncomfortable, some were curious. 1 or 2 looked almost relieved it wasn't them. "You can clean out your desk by Friday," Daniel said. "Security will deactivate your badge at 5 p.m. There it was. The final blow. Not just fired, escorted out, as if I were a threat. For a moment I felt my hands shake. 12 years reduced to a spectacle. He wanted a reaction. Tears, anger, begging. Instead I smiled. A calm, steady smile. "Of course," I said softly, "if that's the company's decision." Something flickered across his face. Confusion. He expected resistance. I gathered my notebook and walked out. Slowly, gracefully. I could feel every whisper start behind me the moment the door closed. Back in my office, I closed the door and leaned against it. My heart was racing. Not from fear, from clarity. You see, Daniel thought he understood power, but he only understood titles. He didn't understand ownership. 12 years ago, when our founder was desperate for capital, I invested everything, every dollar I had saved. And when my father passed away, I invested that inheritance too. The founder offered equity instead of a larger salary. Most people laughed at the risk. I didn't. I believed in the company. And over time, when early investors sold their shares, I quietly bought them. Slowly, carefully, patiently. By 2016, I held 51%, majority shareholder, not public knowledge, not advertised, but legally binding. Daniel thought he was firing a department head. He was dismissing the person who technically owned more of the company than anyone else in that building. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. There was already an email from legal. Subject: Monday board confirmation. I almost laughed. The timing was almost poetic, because Daniel didn't just humiliate me, he made a critical mistake. For months, I had been reviewing internal financial discrepancies, budget reallocations that didn't match projections, consulting contracts that looked inflated, and every time I asked questions, Daniel brushed them off. "Strategic adjustments," he'd say. "Trust the process," but I don't trust the process. I trust numbers, and numbers don't lie. I printed the reports, all of them, 43 pages of documented inconsistencies. Then I packed my office. Photos, awards. A plant someone gave me after our first $1 million quarter. No one stopped by. No one said goodbye. That hurt more than the firing. 12 years of loyalty. And silence was my farewell. At exactly 4:58 p.m. my badge stopped working. I looked at it, smiled, and walked out on my own. Friday night, Daniel probably celebrated. He probably thought he removed an obstacle, cleared space for someone younger, someone easier to control, because I knew something else. He had already started mentoring my replacement. A 29-year-old analyst named Brooke, smart, ambitious, impressionable. He introduced her in meetings more and more, gave her my projects, had her sit in my chair during presentations. He thought I didn't notice. I noticed everything. Monday morning, 8:30 a.m. boardroom, same table, different energy. The chairman sat at the center. 7 board members, our external legal advisor, and me. Daniel walked in at 8:34, coffee in hand, mid-laugh. Then he saw me sitting at the head of the table. His laughter stopped mid-breath. "Kira," he said carefully, "I thought you were cleaning out my desk. I finished gently. The chairman gestured to the empty chair. Please sit, Daniel, he did, slowly, confused. The chairman cleared his throat. We've received multiple internal reports regarding financial irregularities. Daniel stiffened. I'm not aware of. You will be, the chairman replied calmly. The legal advisor slid the folder toward him. 43 pages. Highlighted, signed, time-stamped. Additionally, the chairman continued, it has been confirmed that Miss Bennett holds majority ownership in this company. Silence. Daniel blinked, then laughed once. A short, nervous sound. That's not possible. I looked at him steadily. It is. The legal advisor pushed forward the shareholder registry. My name, 51%, dated, signed, verified. His face lost color. You never told anyone. You never asked, I replied. His breathing changed, faster. You set me up. No, I said softly. You underestimated me. The chairman continued. Effective immediately, we are voting on executive removal due to breach of fiduciary duty. Daniel's hands trembled. This is retaliation. It's accountability, I corrected. The vote was unanimous. 7 hands raised. His access revoked. Effective immediately. Security entered. Quiet, professional. Daniel stood slowly. He looked at me like he was trying to understand how the narrative flipped so quickly. As he walked past me, he stopped. You could have warned me. I met his eyes. You could have respected me. He had no response. By noon, an internal email was sent. Leadership transition. Commitment to transparency. Interim executive restructuring. My phone began buzzing. Messages, apologies, explanations. Sudden loyalty. It's fascinating how quickly perception changes when authority shifts. Later that afternoon, I walked back into my office. Except now, it wasn't just my office. It was a symbol. Not of revenge, but of patience. I sat down in the same chair Daniel had once told Brooke to use. I opened the blinds. Sunlight filled the room. For the first time in years, I felt calm, not triumphant, not angry, balanced. Because this was never about revenge. It was about principle. You don't humiliate people who built the foundation you stand on. You don't erase 12 years with a performance speech. And you definitely don't try to fire the person who owns the majority of the company. Daniel thought power came from position. I knew it came from ownership. And timing. He chose Thursday, I chose Monday. And the difference between those 2 days, patience. Sometimes the strongest move isn't speaking louder. It's letting someone believe they're in control, until they're not. I thought it would end in that boardroom. It didn't. Power doesn't shift quietly, it ripples. And Daniel wasn't the type to disappear without trying to rewrite the narrative. 2 days after his removal, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then I answered, silence, then his voice. You destroyed my career. No greeting, no apology, just accusation. I leaned back in my chair. You destroyed your own career. You knew, he snapped. You knew you had majority control and you let me fire you. I almost smiled. You didn't fire me, Daniel. You attempted to. There was heavy breathing on the other end. You embarrassed me. That word, embarrassed, as if that was the crime. You humiliated me in front of the entire department, I said calmly. You scheduled a public execution. You're twisting it. No, I replied softly. I just documented it. He went quiet. Then his voice changed. Less aggressive, more desperate. They're auditing everything. Yes, you sent those reports. Yes, you could ruin me. I didn't ruin you, I said evenly. Your signatures did. There was a long pause. Then he said something that almost surprised me. They won't hire me anywhere if this becomes public. And there it was. Fear, not of guilt, not of integrity, but of consequence. That depends, I said. On what? On whether you cooperate with the audit. He exhaled sharply. You're enjoying this. I wasn't. That was the interesting part. I'm protecting what I built. After that call, he stopped trying to intimidate me. Instead, he tried something else. Narrative control. Former employees began messaging me. Apparently, Daniel was telling people he was forced out by a hostile takeover. He painted himself as the victim of a silent power play, as if I had been lurking in the shadows waiting to strike. What he didn't understand is that silence isn't strategy. Documentation is. Within a week, the internal audit uncovered more than budget shifts. There were vendor contracts routed through a consulting firm registered under his brother-in-law's name. There were bonus allocations approved without board oversight. There were expense reimbursements that didn't align with company policy. Nothing dramatic enough for headlines, but enough. enough to permanently stain credibility. The board asked me if I wanted to pursue legal action. I thought about it, really thought about it. I could, I had grounds, but lawsuits are loud. And I didn't need noise, I needed stability. No public litigation, I said. Recover the funds, close it internally. The chairman looked at me carefully. You're being generous. No, I replied. I'm being strategic. A public scandal would hurt the company, and I didn't sacrifice 12 years to watch it burn over one man's ego. 3 weeks later, Daniel requested a meeting. In person. I almost declined. But curiosity won. We met in a neutral office downtown. He looked different, smaller somehow. No tailored confidence. No rehearsed authority, just tension. I need a clean exit, he said after we sat down. You have one? You know what I mean. He needed the audit contained, no public disclosure, no industry-wide whispers. He wanted a letter of neutral reference. I watched him carefully. You humiliated me publicly, I said. And now you want privacy, he swallowed. I misjudged you. Yes, I said, you did. He leaned forward. I thought you were just steady, safe, predictable. I let that sit between us. Predictable is dangerous when you underestimate it. Silence stretched. I'll cooperate fully, he said. Return whatever's required, just keep it internal. He wasn't negotiating from power anymore. He was negotiating from fear, and fear changes people. Full cooperation, I said. Written admission, financial restitution, no narrative rewriting. He nodded immediately. Yes, and one more thing. He looked up cautiously. You send an email to the department. His eyes narrowed slightly. About what? About the restructuring meeting, he hesitated. You want me to admit I mishandled it? Yes. Another pause, then a quiet, defeated nod. The email went out the following Monday. Short, carefully worded, but clear. He acknowledged poor judgment, poor leadership conduct, lack of professionalism. He didn't mention my ownership. He didn't mention the audit. But he corrected the story. That was enough. 6 months later, the company was stronger. Financial controls tightened. Transparency increased. Employee retention improved. And Brooke, she transferred departments. Privately, she admitted she felt uncomfortable with how Daniel operated. She thought he was mentoring her. Turns out he was positioning her. I promoted her 6 months later, not as a replacement, as talent. Because the difference between insecurity and leadership is this: insecurity replaces, leadership elevates. I sometimes think about that Thursday, the way he stood at the head of the table, the confidence, the performance. He thought power was volume, authority, titles, but real power is quieter, it's ownership, it's preparation, it's patience. He chose humiliation, I chose timing, and timing is everything. The day he tried to make me feel small was the day he signed his own exit, not because I planned revenge, but because I never stopped paying attention. And that's the part people forget. The quiet ones aren't weak, they're watching.